From the Old Testament to the New Testament. Here's something that is helpful just to frame a timeline. The Old Testament, the Old Covenant, the 39 books from Genesis to Malachi, were written over a period of over 1,000 years. 1,000 years plus. More history than that is included in those 39 books, but it was written in about or over a 1,000-year period, whereas the New Testament was the events that happened in a single lifetime. It's a much shorter period of time than the Old Testament. And yet, the Old Testament is what anticipates, looks forward to, and predicts the New Testament. The Old Testament is waiting for the fulfillment of all of the promises that it has made, especially concerning Jesus Christ. And so, to get into the New Testament in the first book, we can't wait to piece those things together. Now, here's a little formula that I found is very helpful in the relationship of the Old Testament and the New Testament. The new is in the old contained, the old is in the new explained. Once again, the New Testament, is in the Old Testament. It's anticipated, it's spoken about. The new is in the old contained, but the Old Testament is in the new explained. All that was promised is explained, and you're going to read, especially in Matthew, this was written that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of by the prophet. That's a phrase that is mentioned 16 times in the Gospel of Matthew, as the Old Testament is being fulfilled in the New Testament. Now, between the Old and the New Testament are 400 years. 400 years, often called 400 silent years. Not because nothing happened during those 400 years. In fact, what I'd like to do for just a few moments is tell you what happened to bring you up to speed, because a lot has changed. But between the closing of the Old Testament book of Malachi and the opening of the first chapter of the book of Matthew, 400 years, 400 silent years, they're called that because simply God didn't say anything during those 400 years. There was no divine revelation given. After Malachi, there was a pause. God pushed the pause button.